And it'll start. Okay. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to talk to you about theming stuff for a little bit. Cool. So my name's Kyle. I work for Levelten. I'm a general Drupal developer. I did theming, and now I kind of do a lot of everything, but this is kind of where my passion lies. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can automate your theme development process using Bootstrap and Less. So just kind of like a generic Drupal theming process, right? How do we create a Drupal theme, right? You get a comp from your client, your designer, your whoever, and then you pick a starting point. A starting point can be a base theme. It can be starting from scratch. It can be any number of things, but really, these are your two most common approaches when you start a theme. You can also take a previous theme you built for another client, edit it, start doing some other stuff. So what do? You write some code, you delete that code, you write some more code, you go to a client review, and then you do it all over again because you have to write more code. So this is kind of the process like per project, right? So now you have another project, okay, now do it all over again, right? It's there's a lot of problems with this. It's very tedious, it's time consuming, we do it all the time. We may not want to do that. And sometimes when you're looking at comps, you go, man, this project really looks a lot like this other project. Why are we rebuilding the same theme over and over again? When you're theming in Drupal, these are some of the problems we run into. So it's hard, right? So theming in Drupal is not necessarily the easiest thing in the world. It's not like you're building a static site. There's a lot of specific functions that you're using, a lot of pre-processing. It's tedious. You're doing a lot of the same things over and over. Hook form alter, hook form alter, hook form alter. We're editing a bunch of stuff. It's also a little complicated. There's a lot of things that go into building a theme. Like sometimes you need a support module. Sometimes you need, like you have to move the code from your theming template into a module. You have to break it apart. You have to try and follow standards as best you can. It doesn't always work that way. And sometimes we do things that we might not want to do, but we do because we have to do it. But as far as the good parts of theming in Drupal, base themes are great. Base themes get us really far, really quick, right off the bat. Themes like Omega, Bootstrap, Foundations, things like that. There's a huge selection of contrib modules that helps you do theming. So we have like things like display suite and panels and block class and fences. I don't use fences anymore, but you can use fences. And there's magic and some other things. Some other really great things you can do when you're theming is that Drupal has a very clear separation of the presentation layer and like a functional layer, like when you have a module versus a theme. So they try and make it as easy as possible to make sure you're using the correct hooks at the time to break that stuff up. So Bootstrap and Less. Who here has used Bootstrap before? Who here has never heard of Bootstrap? All right, we're on the right track. So if you've never heard of Bootstrap, you all have. It is probably the most popular framework, like front-end framework on the internet right now. So it's HTML and CSS and JavaScript all combined into a framework. Helps us have a really nice responsive mobile project on the internet. So Less is the CSS preprocessor that Bootstrap is built upon. So if you've never seen Less before, it's like CSS but shorter and it compiles into longer stuff. It takes out a lot of the repetitive things that we do when we're writing code. Too long didn't read helps you build websites really fast, right? Or quicker than we used to. So this is kind of what a generic Bootstrap site could look like, or these are some components you would see. You have a nav bar, you have some menu items, you have a logo in the corner, maybe you have a carousel or a featured image. You have this button styling and headings and default button styles and callouts and things like that. So this is kind of what a generic theme would look like, or Bootstrap theme would look like. So why are we automating this process of theming, right? And I'll get into more about what that actually means, what we're automating. So themes are hard, right? So if we don't have to do it more than once, why don't we just do it one time and make a really great dynamic theme that we can alter via UI? We can create these dynamic themes without adding a lot of code. So surprisingly, if you have a theme already built on Bootstrap, you can add just a dozen lines of code to get a very basic integration going, and I'll show you some more advanced stuff that you can build on top of it that's kind of really neat. You can put as much or as little theming options into a client's hands. So what we're talking about is we're going to take a theme, we're going to add some UI functions to it, so where you can hand it off to a client, and if they want to change colors, all they have to do is go into the UI and change the color, right? They don't have to call you, a developer, and say, hey, go to the variables file, change the name of this variable, recompile the theme, commit it, push it, tag it, release it, right? Yeah, I can just go, oh yeah, just go to the menu and change the thing, it's done. Multi-brands, right? So a lot of times when you're building the same theme, it might be a brand or product where you have a series of these websites and you need the same style or the same theme over and over, but you just want it to look slightly different. So a really great use case for this is that we have a client, SIL. So SIL has this multi-site where they have these sites all around the world, right? So they have one for the Pacific, they have one for Mexico, they have one for Peru. You guys notice anything across the board? They all look exactly the same, right? This is one theme that's running on all the sites, right? So it's actually multi-site. It's on Acquia. So everything is running in one code base. It's the same theme, no duplicated themes, no individual themes. It's one file. And distributions. If you've ever built a distribution or if you work in distributions, maybe you have Open Atrium, maybe you have Open Enterprise, maybe you have something like that. You can take that and ship it with the dynamic theme to where you can actually color it and make it customized so it doesn't always look like the rest of the distros that are out there. So, why Bootstrap, right? Why can I do this with Omega? Why can I do it with Foundations? Why can I do it with anything else? Well, Bootstrap is great because it's ubiquitous, right? No one here raised their hand when I asked if you've never heard of Bootstrap. Everyone's heard of Bootstrap. You can Google Bootstrap components and you'll get hundreds and thousands of results for Bootstrap resources. There's a lot of really free things when you Google Bootstrap stuff. So there's really no way, there's just so many things you can apply to Bootstrap. Less also compiles pretty fast. So back in the day, it used to be that Sass was kind of slow and then Less was pretty fast, but now you have some enhancements with Sass. So actually, I don't know if Sass compiles faster, but they're both pretty fast. So there's also a lot of contrib support for Less in Drupal, which if you guys don't know, you have a local celebrity over here, Mark. So who here uses Drupal Bootstrap theme, the Bootstrap thing in Drupal? Okay, Mark wrote it. So, well, he helped write it. He wrote it. So it's actually a really great base theme that Mark and a lot of contributors have put a lot of time into to make sure that it maps as many functions from core Bootstrap as humanly possible. So we have Drupal Bootstrap, the theme. We have Less PHP, which is really great for compiling on the fly. CK Editor supports these things we're going to talk about. So it's a really great kind of general way. If you've ever tried to do the same thing we're about to do with Sass, you'll find out that it's really old. It's not particularly supported very well. So this is going to be kind of neat. So like I said, if you go to GitHub and you just search Bootstrap, you'll get 56,000 results of things that are built in Bootstrap. So like I said, there's no shortage of components when you're working with Bootstrap. Actually, I saw this one in the list. There's a Bootstrap book. If you want a free book, it's up there. So what about Bootstrap 4? Well, whatever. So we'll kind of skip it. But actually, a lot of things that you can find in Bootstrap 4, you can either pull down to Bootstrap 3, or if you want to convert Bootstrap 4 to Less, you could. But, that's whatever. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start a demo. Because a lot of stuff I can talk about, but really you probably want to see what we're doing. So what we're going to do is I have a project theme going right now, right? So what I'm going to do is, everyone see this pretty well? All right. So what I have I built this demo site last night. If I'm missing something, I'm sorry. I did it really quick, so we're just gonna try and go for it. It's not a pretty one. I don't have any carousels. I don't have anything going. Basically, we installed Drupal, used Devel to generate some content, some menus, some taxonomies, and then we just loaded it up. So as you can see, this is a very generic Bootstrap site, right? So we have a header top, we have a nav bar, we have menu items, we have drop downs, things like that. It looks pretty good, right? The general way, or in a standard project, what you would do is you would go to your theme, right? We would actually import the CSS file, so it would probably look something like this, right? We would use something like Grunt, or just be a command line, or npm, or whatever, or CodeKit. We would save our less files that would compile into a file. Then that gets imported via the theming system, and that's how it works, right? Well, if you're using modules like the less module, it has a lot of great support to compile on the fly, right? So if you look at, I opened up the Sass API, but see, there's not really a lot of support for Sass. But if we go to less, you'll see that on Drupal.org, there's a really great less module that helps you compile your less themes, or you can actually do it via modules as well, and it'll compile it on the fly, and include it in your theme. So this last time this was updated was November, the dev version. It's still in development, so it's constantly being updated all the time. So don't worry about being deprecated anytime soon. So what we'll do is that we'll install less, the module. We'll also install the less PHP library. So if we look at, we'll have the less PHP library in there as well. And we're going to go ahead and turn on, or make sure we have turned on, the debug less. So we're going to come in, we're going to select our less library. We're going to enable developer mode, which means every time we refresh your page, it's going to rebuild the library, or rebuild your CSS files. So what a theme might look like. If we go to our theme, which we call project, these are all the settings that are inherited from Bootstrap, right? So this is a child theme of Bootstrap, the base theme. So you can enable as many functions as you want via Bootstrap. And then these are some functions that I added into this custom theme, right? So in this theme, I can change things like my header colors. I can change the width of the top section of the menu. We can make like these little gradient selectors of the page title. So if I open up any sort of node, you don't see anything right now, but if I change this, add a page title separator via the UI, I can hit save and then refresh, and now we get this little gradient line across the bar. So there's a lot of ways you can add settings to your theme that are really simple for clients to use on the fly, right? So what about less, right? So we're talking about less. How are we going to make this a better less theme? So what we can do is that with less, we can add our own variables to the theme, right? So you see right here in the very bottom, we have things like the primary color of the theme. We added a secondary color to our theme. We can also change things like the font size, right? So actually, I'm going to take that one out really quick because we're not too concerned about it right now. I'm going to clear cache. So these are the only two we have. Now, some of these things I've added in myself, right? So you see at the very bottom we have a reset and a shuffle. I'll add a couple more in to show you what these things do. But basically, as a client, if I were to sell this theme to you or sell you a project, you as the client can go in and go, hey, you know what? Actually, I don't want that yellow. I kind of want it to be like this red. Right? So let's make this red, and let's make the link colors purple-ish, right? So we're going to save that. We're going to come in here. Now notice where the yellow and the blue is, right? We're going to refresh. And so what it's doing right now is that less is going, and the theme is being sent to less. It's recompiling. Now we've replaced our colors with red and of yellow and blue with red and purple, right? And it's across the whole site. So at the very bottom, you can see this purple footer instead of the blue footer it was before. Things like that. Pretty neat, right? Yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, there's a lot of things you can change, right? So basically what we're doing is that we're injecting variables into the less process. So if I look at my Bootstrap theme, and we look at the variables file. So if you're not familiar looking at Bootstrap, like the code, what you'll notice is that every theme or every Bootstrap instance will have a variables file, right? So you can go through here. There are different grays, like we added a brand secondary color. There's these background body colors, you know, font sizes, font things. This is all just specific to this one, but if we were to look at the Bootstrap theme somewhere, you would see that there's just a lot of other variables in here as well. So, I mean, this list just goes on and on and on and on and on. So, like drop-down link color, drop-down link hover color, things like that. So, these are all variables you can override via theme settings, right? And it's really, 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 really simple, okay? So, if you had your theme info, right? We're going to go ahead and start adding in some variables we can override via the UI, right? And it's just as simple as this syntax. So we're going to add less vars, not cars. And then we're going to pick another variable. So I added the font size base, which is the base font for the site. But let's pick another one. So let's see something that we can actually pick out. Anything with a color is probably pretty good. So text color, like let's make, I don't know why, the default text color, but we'll change it to something weird. And we're also going to define a default variable setting for this as well. So we're going to take this and let's make it whatever gray dark is. It's probably this. So we're going to override that. You can add as many or as little as you'd like, but it's pretty simple. So we're going to save this. We're going to clear it out. And we're going to go back in. We're going to refresh our theme settings. And now you can see that we have extra variables down here as well. So let's say we want the base font size to be 18 pixels. We want this color to be, I don't know, anyone throw out hash FF0000. That's red, right? Yeah. Sure. So let's go with that. Now you'll notice that this one doesn't have a color wheel in it because I wrote some extra code to add in a color picker specifically for this. Basically what it does is that it looks for anything that starts with brand hyphen, which in my specific case, we assume it's a color. So we're just looking for brand hyphen fields, and we're going to add a color picker to it. So if I were to change this to like brand something, it would show up as a color picker, but we're not going to do that. So we can add these colors in. We're going to save it. And we're going to go back. We're going to refresh. It's going to recompile the theme again. And then we'll probably see pretty large text and, I don't know, red text everywhere. So the text is larger. I don't see red text, so I'm guessing that this is using some other variable. So what kind of crazy stuff can we do with this, right? Like I said, this is a very dynamic way of creating themes. So in our case, we wanted to make this really interesting way for clients to theme their site without a lot of effort, right? So there are two modules that we wrote at Levelten. One of our old developers wrote an API integration with a service called Color Lovers. So have you ever looked at Color Lovers? Have you ever used it before? Yeah, it's great. Color Lovers is kind of like a creative community for colors and brands and patterns and things like that. So you can actually go to browse colors, and all these people submit different color patterns and collections of colors and things like that. And yeah, and palettes. Yeah, specifically palettes, actually. So if you're ever looking for a palette to use on a site, if you've ever heard of Adobe Cooler, it looks just like this. But Adobe Cooler doesn't have a really good API because they kind of broke it. So Color Lovers is open and it's great. So the module is basically a wrapper for the API. So you can turn on the module and then call the API throughout any module or theme function you'd like. So what we did is that we added it as a module, and I built this functionality into our theme. So what we have now is that I have this thing called Color Lover Palettes. All right. Now let's see if I can actually get the whole thing in there. So this palette mode top, this is just picking the top themes or the top palettes that are on Color Lovers. So if you go to the top Color Lover palettes, it's pulling in a list here. So do this even smaller. So you can see that we have multiple types of colors in here. And if I click one, it's going to update the colors down below. So watch the bottom. So these are changing, right? So what I can do is that I can add more colors, right? So let's just add like 4 different colors to our theme. So secondary, tertiary, maybe. And I think we have like accents, and then you can add, let's add one more just for the heck of it. Let's call it accent 2. So we'll go ahead and clear our cache. Now we'll refresh this. So now see how there's a color picker, or a color, yeah, mini color picker is there. So what I did is that in my specific implementation, I said only pull in the Color Lover palettes that have at least 5 colors, because if we have more than 5 colors, it's not going to pick those. So now I can go to any one of these and it's replacing all the colors, except for that middle one for some reason. Now what I can do is that, say you get a palette of colors, right? In my case, I wanted to shuffle them. So I can actually click this, and it's going to take all the colors that are in there and shuffle them around until I get a pattern that's one that I like, right? I can also reset it, hit reset, and it's going to reset it back to the default colors that we've provided in the theme. So we're going to save this, go back to our standard one, refresh. It's going to recompile the theme, and you're going to see hopefully normal colors again.
How do you stop the shuffle? Just click on it?
Yeah, I'm just clicking it. So every time I click shuffle, it'll cycle the colors around. So, well, that's the thing. Like every time you click shuffle, it'll just do it once. Yeah, so you just click it however many times you want to click it.
Yeah.
So it's back to our normal colors, right? Now, what I can do specifically with Color Lovers is in our implementation, but I can go to the Color Lovers API playground. So we integrated what we call a playground. So you can actually go to the palettes, right? We're going to open up the palette options. You know what? I actually have some palettes that I wrote on Color Lovers in my profile. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my username. You can do a lot more searching in here as well, but let's just see what happens. So I hit save. Now these are all the colors I have in my profile on Color Lovers, right? So if I were to go over here and log in, you will see my palettes, right? So these are all the palettes that I have in my profile, and now we have them in our site, right? It's awesome. Also, there's a demo API URL, so actually if you were to call this in the browser, this is the data that comes back. So you can actually see what's coming through an API for Color Lovers. So this was a pretty simple integration with the theme. So now what I can do is that I can come back here, refresh. I can open up my Color Lover palettes again. And let's go to, I can actually search via right in the theme. So I'm going to put in my username. Hit save. Come back down. Now these are the palettes that I've provided. So I'm going to pick Citrus Grove. I just like watching it every time I click. It's just fun. So we'll pick Citrus Grove. So that's just one color integration, right? So now let's get even dumber, right? So now let's not let people pick. Let's people actually upload a palette or upload an image, and we'll extract a palette from that, right? So there's a service called Pictaculous, which is made by MailChimp, and it's a color palette generator, right? So what we can do is that we can take an image, we can upload it to Pictaculous, and Pictaculous will actually generate a color palette based on that image, right? So if I'm on the Pictaculous site, I can go in here, I can look at, we have some Texas camp things, maybe some assets. So we're gonna take one of these guys somewhere. That's not very many colors. Oh, that one's pretty good. Let's pick this one. So we're going to upload it to Pictaculous, and Pictaculous is going to take that image, it's going to map it, and it gives me back a color palette, right? So now, as we can see, it'll pick it. It doesn't really order the colors very well, because obviously dominant color would be blue, but that's not the first one in the list, hence why we integrated the shuffle button. So that's great, right? So now you can get your own palettes, but we want that in the site, right? So I wrote the Pictaculous module on Drupal.org. It's just the API, same way the color lover modules work. All we do is integrate the API into the site, and then it's up to you to integrate that into your theme, right? So if we go back to our site and we look at our Pictaculous module, I'm going to do the same thing that I just did on Pictaculous. So we're in our Drupal site. I can go back over here. I can take our image. We're going to upload it. Hopefully this works. I've only used this like a handful of times. So now this is actually going to Pictaculous, pulling back the color palettes and saving it into Drupal into a variable. All right, so now you can see the colors that come back from our service. So now I can go back to our theme. I'm going to refresh. And if all is good and well in the world, because, you know, live demos, boom. Now we have the palettes that came back from Pictaculous, right? So now you can have a client upload an image directly into the Drupal site, and it gives them a palette back that is potentially suitable for their site, right? Now, it might not always work, but if you're building a product, right, so maybe you're building a product in Drupal, you can now take this theme, ship it with that product, and it's pretty configurable for most of the people who would use it, right? If you don't need something that needs to change a lot, if you don't need something that has a lot of like moving parts to it, but it's a pretty solid theme, you can change the colors, which that's usually the only thing that people care about is the ability to change colors. Then this will work pretty well, right? So let's pick this guy, and hopefully that updated the colors down there. It did. So I'm going to shuffle these colors around again. Maybe we'll get one that works. That's something. Good enough. All right, so we'll go with that. We'll save it. Same as before, the theme will recompile it. Now, this all just isn't magic, right? We have to build this functionality in. So one of the things you have to do is that it doesn't matter how many variables you add to your theme info file. It doesn't matter how many things you have here. If there's nothing in your theme that's actually utilizing these variables, nothing's going to happen, right? If you go back to that Bootstrap component list that I showed earlier, like this is every variable that comes shipped with Bootstrap, right? So potentially you could take any one of these and update that variable. Most of them are pixels or colors, like heights and widths and depths and thicknesses and things like that. But this is just for Bootstrap. You can implement your own custom variables as well, right? So even though I added a brain accent, we're not actually using a brain accent in any of our colors anywhere. So make sure that when you're building your themes, you have to implement those changes back into your theming process, right? So what else do we have here? So what does code like this look like, right? In terms of if you have a basic Drupal Bootstrap site, this is all you need: less vars, brand or variable name. But a lot of the stuff for me is actually going to be going into